Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Brody, and I'm the acting director of the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And on behalf of the center, I am delighted to welcome you all to the National Museum of American History for tonight's Innovative Lives program featuring inventors Theresa Dankovich and Madison Maxey. We are thrilled. I mean, you have no idea how thrilled we are. Seriously. We are so thrilled to see you in person. We appreciate that you came out to join us tonight. This is actually our first in-person Innovative Lives program since March of 2020. We do appreciate that many of you joined our programs on Zoom, but it's wonderful to be with you here in person tonight and the conversations that were just had without the mediation of a computer screen. So, yay. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Lemelson Center is the Smithsonian's leader in studying invention in history and encouraging inventive creativity. We achieve this through our research and documentation efforts, our exhibitions, our education initiatives, and public engagement programs like this one tonight. Our annual Innovative Lives series presents unique opportunities for you, the audience, to meet contemporary inventors for live conversations that demystify who inventors are, what they look like, and where invention takes place. And this relationship between place and invention has been a central focus of the Lemelson Center's research since our founding here at the museum in 1995. Throughout that time, we have convened several symposia, workshops, and studies featuring historians and inventors and scientists and engineers and educators and policy specialists, anthropologists, and other social scientists. And together, we've explored and found commonalities in how various societies in the past and in the present nurture, or in some cases, hinder innovation. We have conducted field research and site visits with inventors ranging from the largest government laboratories to basement workshops and kitchen tables. In all, this helps us understand how one's physical environment can enhance the inventive process. We have published this work in many different ways, but most significantly, as you saw earlier tonight, you saw that the Lemelson Center's award-winning exhibition, Places of Invention, which opened in 2015. So in that exhibition, we feature 6 case studies drawn from diverse geographical regions and different time periods that consider a core fundamental question. What kind of place stimulates creative minds and sparks a surge of invention and innovation? And this is somewhat of a bittersweet evening for us. We will soon be closing the Places of Invention exhibition on July 30th. We're doing this to make way for our new exhibition, which is called Change Your Game, and that will open in March of 2024. But to mark and celebrate the milestone of the exhibit, Places of Invention, and its closing, the Lemelson Center decided to dedicate the Innovative Lives program series for this year to revisiting some of the stories and the themes that were featured in the exhibition. And I just want to pause here for a moment. We have a lot of friends and people we haven't seen for a while. I do want to give a special call out in the audience slide is Dr. Arthur Malella. He's the founding director of the Lemelson Center, now director emeritus, and a driving force behind the Places of Invention project. So tonight's speakers, inventors Theresa Dankovich and Madison Maxey, have traveled across the globe to find their places of invention. In addition to learning about their inventions and their creative pathways, their experiences as inventors and entrepreneurs in an increasingly global, remote, and virtual world offer us new insights about the importance of place in the invention ecosystem. And so before I turn this over to Monica, I have a few quick housekeeping notes to share with you all. We do ask that you please hold all of your questions until the end of the conversation. There will be a question and answer session. We will bring microphones out and you'll be able to ask questions of the panelists. This program is designed for people of all ages, and here we follow the Smithsonian Code of Conduct, which outlines the civil and respectful engagement from all of us during this program. We are recording this program, and you will be able to watch the recording of this program on our website within a few weeks. And at this time, I ask you that you just double check your phones, make sure they're on silent so we don't unduly interrupt the conversation. Now, this is the fun part for me. I get to introduce my really good friend and colleague, Monica M. Smith. Monica is the acting deputy director of the Smithsonian's Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And since 1995, Monica has provided dynamic leadership and is a driving force in museum exhibitions, public programs, and other invention research and educational initiatives. Her major projects include serving as the project director, the co-curator, and principal investigator, all at the same time, for not one, not two, but 3 National Science Foundation grant-funded exhibitions. The first was Invention at Play. It also includes the upcoming Change Your Game, and of course it includes the 2017, Places of Invention, which in 2017 was awarded the Smithsonian Excellence in Exhibitions Award. So Monica has a great accomplishments and knowledge on the subject. And Monica, I officially turn the program over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was a very warm and appreciated introduction. It's wonderful to see all of you. It is kind of surreal. The last time I was sitting in this chair interviewing women inventors on the stage was indeed March 2020. We had the inventors of the jog bra here. And yes, wonderful evening. And I'm equally pleased and honored to have tonight these 2 wonderful women with me. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, then I'm going to let them share a little bit about their work just to give some context the evening. And then I'm going to kind of go into some questions around their truly innovative lives, what got them started, mentoring, their processes, and how they've gotten to where they are today. So as we have this discussion, I hope you will think of questions that I have somehow managed not to ask, and be ready to ask some questions. But first, let me introduce them. So I will start first immediately to my right is Madison Maxey. Maddie has always loved making things, from clothing to stretchy inks that conduct electricity. She started sewing when she was 8 years old and began her design career by interning in the fashion industry. She has since broadened her exploration of how technology and design come together through innovations in electronic textiles, or e-textiles. Maxey and her company LOOMIA create fabrics that act like circuit boards for innovative products that range from medical wearables for monitoring patients to heated ski gear. And next we have Theresa Dankovich. Terry invented germ-killing water filters as a graduate student and co-founded her company Folia Water in 2016 to scale up production. Folia filters, which are patented, are made of thick paper embedded with silver nanoparticles, which are lethal to microbes. The filters were originally distributed in safe water books. Each book provided a year of safe drinking water for a family. Dankovich's team has field tested her inexpensive filters with users in South Africa, Ghana, Honduras, Bangladesh, Kenya, and Haiti. Quote, "I saw an opportunity to simply listen to the people and to deliver designs that fit with their culture," unquote. So with that, I would like to go ahead and start and just have them get to introduce themselves a little bit beyond my very few words and talk, to give you a little context about their current work. So why don't I start with you, Maddie, if you'll give a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very good description. It was very well written. Most of my work has been in electronic textiles for the past 10 years or so almost, and they are really what they sound like. So they're fabrics that can conduct electricity. You can use them where normal circuit boards don't really fit the bill. So if you need something to be comfortable but also maybe sense a patient, you might want to use something like an electronic textile instead of a standard circuit. And so all of my invention work has been in this field, and it's a really new space. It's a growing space, so I'm excited to keep working and developing here.
Great, thank you. And Terry?
Yeah, I feel like that was a great description of what I was doing a few years ago. But yeah, we've grown our company to also have a subsidiary in Bangladesh, and we're specifically working with the water filters there. But we also are we've been looking at new products in like the food packaging space and dabbled a little bit in face masks. And yeah, so now we're like more of what I would call a materials company. We actually renamed ourselves as Folia Materials instead of Folia Water. And we're looking at different ways that we could basically add functionality to like paper-based materials, which is the future. Plastic is obviously starting to be a no-no.
Yeah, so I definitely want them to have a chance to talk about some of the work they're doing now and looking toward the future. But one of the things we love to get into with Innovative Lives is to really sort of tap into this innate creativity that we know is in people, and especially young people. And sometimes it gets nurtured and fostered in special ways. And so I just wanted to have a chance to ask you, like, Maddie, when you were a kid, were there certain things that you can maybe look back on now that helped you become someone who felt they could be an inventive problem solver?
Hi, we were talking about it in the green room that sometimes people just take things a little bit further than others. Like, you have this conviction that you need to just kind of take it a little further for some reason. And I think I've always felt that way. My mom loves this story about when I was in kindergarten and I came home and told her I needed like 3 bags of pony beads to make bracelets for all the kids in my class. And I just felt really strongly that I just like had to do this thing. And I think that is kind of like my core trait, is that if something seems interesting or worth kind of playing around with, I will just decide that I like must do it, and I will try and see it through until it's just kind of impossible. And that's sort of, which is not always wise, but I think that's sort of like the thread that has gone all the way through for them.
And was there some special way in which your mom, beyond buying you the beads, was supportive or nurturing, or was a role model for you?
Yeah, she would, like, she was very present and supportive. So she would like go and buy them, which was a lot. I didn't have any money, so I needed something, obviously. But I think a lot of it was my dad. He was an aerospace engineer, and he was really into making things, and he also cared a lot about craft. So he would, we built this bed. I also was convinced I needed this like certain kind of bed, and so we're like, okay, we're gonna build it. And I took all the measurements wrong because I just like didn't know. He's like, you take the measurements, we'll build the bed. It was off by like 10 inches or something. And he was like, okay, well, let me show you how you actually measure, and we will also find a clever solution to fix this. And so I think it was kind of that combination of getting to try things, getting to learn craft and good execution, and also just kind of having somebody take me and be like, okay, sure, we'll entertain this conviction you have. That was very helpful.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Terry?
I was going to say a lot about craft also. Actually, my brother's in the audience, and he can attest that our mom taught us how to do all sorts of crafts. She's like sewing, knitting, like woodworking, I don't know, a dozen other things. But there was always like this, yeah, you can do it. This is how you do it. And she also did things very well. So as a kid, sometimes you got frustrated because you're like, how does she just do that? And still sometimes I feel that way. But it also gives you the idea of how you can go ahead and make something. Like, if you don't have some direct experience with it, it's a lot more difficult to get started, Like, so if you see like somebody make something from like, scratch, or even from some kit, you can start to see how like you could make other things and like, come up with different ideas on what you might want to do.
Mm-hmm. So do you and your brother build stuff together?
Together, not really.
Crafting side by side? Is that...
He does some dangerous stuff. I'll just put it that way. Says the chemist, but.
So what about like teachers and classes? Were there any particular classes you took or teachers or other mentors in your life that you feel like really helped shape your path? Either of you can answer.
Like, I'm not really sure. I've been actually thinking about how to best answer that question for a while. But, obviously, I mentioned my, my mom and all the stuff she does. But, like, I think I saw a lot more as I got beyond childhood in a way. Like, going to university and meeting people from all over the world and, like, learning about stuff that, they're doing. And it was really kind of cool, like that.
Did you know what you wanted to do when you went into university?
Oh, I thought I was pre-med.
Okay.
And then like decided I didn't want to, go to medical school and, you know, spend that much time in hospitals and all that. But yeah, then, I didn't know exactly what, but I know that I liked chemistry a lot, and like ended up going that route and did a PhD in chemistry later. But yeah, it took me a couple of years to decide that.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar where there wasn't a specific person, but I do feel like there were these little drops along the way of things that, somebody kind of like pushes you along when you need it most. And I do think those things made a very big difference. Like I had this internship, and the woman who owned the company, she started, she sold it, and she was like, "Oh, I will give you this particular task because you're good. Like, you can, like, you have a spark." Was like something she told me, and that, gave me some energy. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I can try some other stuff. And I feel like people give you those like words in passing, and they boost you up a little bit. I feel like those were very helpful things. I guess another thing also is that I got this fellowship. And the fellowship actually kind of opened up a lot of the doors of what business is like for me. Like I understood how the whole investor thing works, like how people get on these lists, like people are on these lists, like they don't get there by themselves. Somebody knows someone. It's like I kind of got an idea of what happens behind the scenes, and I think that was also kind of critical for understanding how to like move things forward.
Yeah, so what was it about some of these experiences you were having as certainly when you got into college and then internships, fellowships, other things like that, that helped you kind of see what your sort of area of both interest and talent was, or, what other elements sort of the places you were working in or going to school in that helped sort of, push you along?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always, like, there was a book that I loved in high school, and it's called The Moviegoer, and, like, one of the ideas is this main character is on the search. He's, like, always kind of, looking, he has this, like, he would go to movies and look for something specific, and he has this, like, personal mission, and I just always sort of felt like through these different internships and things, I was kind of, like, looking for what, like where things led almost, it's like you're on this mission, you're following the path, and so it sounds like a very abstract way of looking at it. I just think you keep kind of digging into what you like. You're like, oh, that was fun, let me do more of it. And eventually it comes down to something that you can really point to that you want to keep doing for a long time, and it's just, learning from each experience and iterating until you get there. I don't know. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I think that like when I was younger, I was interested in a lot of different things, and it was hard to decide. But back in the 90s was when like the first, I think, book on green chemistry was published, which I didn't really find out about for maybe a decade. Like it wasn't like, it's like an academic little thing. But I just remember thinking that stuff was important. But at the time, this is like 20 years ago, right? But the people were like, no, plastic's so cheap. Nobody would ever do anything different. Like, come on. It has to like really like compete with basically the cost of nothing. And you're like, well, maybe someday. And like, it's fascinating to see that like we talked to a bunch of corporates about like food packaging these days, and they're so interested in moving away from plastic because of the ocean plastic and all the other stuff that's going on, that it's like I kind of was like, yeah, this is interesting, and just like in some ways just kind of read about something and started reading more about it, and kind of worked with a little bit of cotton research and my master's, and then paper-related research for my PhD. And that's all like renewable materials, and not thinking that the world was going to kind of catch up. And, and now it's like, wow, I've been working in that for like 20 years. But it's not necessarily something I always planned out,
So can you each tell me just what what was maybe your first aspect of the businesses you've now been growing? Like where was it? What other people were involved, and what were some of the sort of circumstances of your getting started with your businesses?
Okay, I can start. So I worked on the project that started the business during my PhD. It was basically the main part of my dissertation. And as it was a PhD, I did something in the lab and showed that it worked, basically.
Can you say where you went to school and just describe
I went to McGill up in Montreal, and I was in the chemistry department. I was working in a lab that specialized in different paper-based materials. And the professor there, I was actually his last PhD student. So I was basically under no pressure to do like anything specific. He was like, "Oh, you want to work on this?" I'm like, "Okay, it sounds interesting." And that was like the point-of-use water filter that we mentioned at the beginning. But at the time, it was really just a little piece of paper that I like had some contraption that looked like a Lego device that you poured water through, and like where you grow bacteria in the lab and you just pour water through and then you count the bacteria after, and it's like, hey, look, it works, cool. And so that was what most PhD students would do afterwards, would be just do something else kind of related and for their postdoc, and then another thing, whatever, and maybe become an academic or some sort of researcher. But I was like, this is cool, and it's paper, it's really cheap, it's, interesting, maybe this could be something that could be like a real product. And so I went on and did environmental engineering, public health over at UVA for a postdoc there, where I actually went to South Africa and tested these tiny little squares with water in South Africa that people use for drinking water, which was contaminated with bacteria. And I saw like, hey, this, thing seems to still work. Okay. And what that led to, oddly enough, was an ad agency learning about the product, and they contacted me, which was strange because I was like, how do they know about me? I'm a postdoc. Like nobody knows about postdocs. They're like the forgotten part of the academic world. But I was kind of intrigued because they were like, we want to have this get out there. And so I was like, okay, why not? I don't know what I'm doing next. Could be interesting. So that became, the drinkable book, which we also have called the Safe Water book. And that got a lot of news coverage, way more than anything I was expecting. And we started working with a water NGO in a couple of different countries in Africa, and basically realized that we needed a real design. We kind of had this crappy design that you could use for lab testing, and kind of had a lot of interest from the outside, and we're like, well, maybe people actually care, and got some funding and just kind of went from there. And the news coverage eventually faded, which was kind of good for getting work done. But at the same time, we were like, what was that? So, now we have actually scaled up the product, and we have a design that works with what people do in rural Bangladesh for their water, which is similar to what is at the Smithsonian. I think the Smithsonian, the last time I talked to you guys, was really the beginning of Folia. So I'm like, this is interesting so many years later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've definitely made some iterations. But it's interesting to kind of see this evolution, and it really was just kind of, I don't really even know why the ad agency contacted me. I think that they said oh, we saw your 3 minutes to save the world little video when I was graduating, which was there's a 3 minutes to explain your PhD thing, if you guys are familiar with that, but it's something that some PhD students did, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And it was on YouTube or something, and 500 people have seen it. So it was one of these things that I was I don't really know how the world works, but it was what got the initial ball rolling to get us out of academia and into the startup world.
Yeah, I feel like we have kind of similar paths in some way,
Yeah.
where it was also kind of a bit of chance.
Yeah.
I was working on projects for different companies that involved some sort of wearable tech aspect, and they were really hard to make and impossible to scale. And I thought that there should be better ways of making these materials. So I did, at that point, Autodesk, this company that does CAD software, had an artist residency. And you kept all your IP because you're making art in this residency. But I used their wet lab to make conductive inks. And at the end of it, I showed it to some people I knew, and they were like, hey, if you want to make this a business, we can invest in it. And I was like, okay, sure. And at that point, people were really excited about wearable technologies. So there were a few companies who seemed kind of interested. So I used that to tell the investors. It was like, hey, so-and-so talked to me, and that helped them. And it was just kind of these chance things sort of pointing everything in one direction. And I think it was kind of similar, where in the beginning, it's there was some excitement, and then afterwards you have to kind of get to work and be like, okay.
How do we actually do this? Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you both tapped into something that was actually a big issue that was either coming, some of the issues around environment, or the e-textiles or these wearable technologies. And so how do you, once the excitement fades from that initial, those ads or the initial stuff, how did you then grow it into a company that you could, really sort of dig in a little bit and follow up on that enthusiasm with something that was really going to work in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the part of it where you have to find something that you truly want to do and you're very interested in. People sometimes, I feel like in startup land, sometimes they'll be like, I'm so bored of this thing. I've been working on it for 3 years. I don't care about email marketing, whatever it is. I want to do something else, and I just don't know if I could. I feel so interested in this topic, and I would probably do it forever. If there's money to, make it feasible, I'll just do it forever. So when all the, attention, excitement goes away, I feel like it's your own interest that has to push it forward and really get to work and know what the work is. And I think for most things, the work that matters is not the the news article. The work that matters is the 20th iteration that meets the technical specs, that meets the price point. It's all these tiny little things. That's the work that's important, and you have to want to do that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It's so funny to think about how different we were back then to now. Got so much coverage for this basically idea, and you're like, well, now we the material for the water filter, we can make a ton of it per day, with our manufacturer, which is before I was doing stuff by hand in a lab. It's kind of oh yeah, those were so different those days. But seeing all of the milestones and things that you meet along the way and the unexpected things, it's that's really what you end up driving after, when, all those how do we scale this up? What, and then once you do, how do you find your customer, and or maybe concurrently.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that aspect of it? Because obviously there's a whole ecosystem here, right, that you need. So it's some of the sort of luck and things you had from people sort of encouraging you, but then it's how do you find the people that you need for your business? How do you get additional funding? How do you scale up what you're doing? And how do you both find and sort of not only maintain, but grow your usership? So there's a lot in there, but can you sort of unpack a little bit for me that whole sort of the business and ecosystem aspect of this that you've experienced?
You want me to go? So with the water filter, we got a couple key grants back in maybe the second or third year of our business that covered a lot of the product development and also the sales and marketing, like kind of two different grants there. So like when we got the product development stuff is all like NSF SBIR, if you're familiar with that. So that like has funded a lot of the like scale-up work that we've done. But
Can you explain that for people who do not know what that is?
NSF, National Science Foundation, they have a small business like program that's specifically for like basically commercializing new technologies. And they have it in all types of science. Like it's not like just like a narrow branch. And that basically there's like a phase 1 that you do like, I think a 6 to 12 month long project. And then if like that goes well, you can apply for the phase 2, which is like really like 2 to 4 years, because there's like all these follow-on supplemental funding that you can get from the phase 2. And that's been like, you know, really helpful for us to like, you know, buy stuff for our lab and like be able to like pay for pilot manufacturing, pilot manufacturing is usually stuff that you throw out, basically. You like try something and you're like, oh, that didn't work. Well, there goes 10K. But yeah, so you have like the opportunity to not like kind of be as concerned about the cost because it's covered from the grant there. And the other key grant we got was one through Unilever and the UK International Development Fund, which was specific for a project related to like development in Bangladesh, which is why we ended up having a subsidiary in Bangladesh. And that was just like, I don't know if Unilever is still doing this, but they used to do a lot of innovation grants, which they would give to small companies, and they would do several in different key areas like in South Asia and Africa. And like, they don't necessarily relate to products that they have. Like, they do have a water filter. Unilever has a Pureit in South Asia and some other parts of the world, but it's not always like related to work that they do. So that helped us establish a sales and marketing team in Bangladesh, and also work with a partner company that does, they're called BOP Inc., which is base of the pyramid for short, which is like base of the income pyramid. So like the lower income folks, and like ways to get products and services that are useful to that income level, basically, in different parts of the world. So we worked with them to like basically figure out the best way to market the product, because there's many different, you know, value propositions that appeal to people. And we did tests like, is this one gonna be what gets someone to buy, or is this one? And like, you know, like various product demos and all that sort of like high touch marketing that happens kind of early in new products. And you see that maybe less so in America, or maybe we just see it in a different way through like social media and stuff. But there it was much more in person. Like you'd go to somebody's like the courtyard in someone's village and do demos. And this would not be done like, I mean, I've been there for that, but this isn't like I went to go do all these demos. We obviously would hire people who speak the language and all of that sort of stuff. But so it was quite the process to get all that set up, as you can imagine. We started the Bangladesh project back in, I guess it was late 2018, early 2019. And I think the subsidiary took until maybe 2020 to get formed. And then they really just started sales sometime in 2020, which of course had hurdles because of 2020. There was like total lockdowns and stuff, and you couldn't, some places you just get arrested if you tried to, you know, be there. And so it wasn't, you know, obviously as strict in the US, but so yeah, there's been many starts and stops with that project, but they're doing pretty well. Like it is a subsidiary. We don't really tell them what to do. We just sell them product at this point and help like with some of the technical stuff as needed.
And if just quickly, can you say, I think you'd mentioned to me that your CEO is different than you. So can you talk about your role in the company?
Yes. So actually, my CEO is my husband, and he is more of a natural salesperson. But yeah, he's also an environmental engineer, so he has a technical background as well. And yeah, I mean, he basically came into the project because all of this stuff was way too much for one person, and I just was talking to him about it, at home, and he was way more interested in that than he was working as a researcher at a national lab at the time, and was, kind of like, I could publish one paper a year and the national lab's happy, or I could do something like totally different and like be, a very dynamic person. So that, kind of he naturally fell into that role, and I was like, well, I'm the one who knows the technology, so I should do the technology side. And that was how we originally divided the work. And we've had various people along the way in different roles too. But I don't know if you've had this experience where you have some people come and some people go, and
Yeah, Maddie, can you talk a little bit about your company and some of the startup issues?
Yeah, of course. I was reading a book and it was saying, when you're starting a company, the beginning is the jungle. Next, you have a dirt road. It kind of works, but it has pit holes and stuff. And then one day you have just a highway. It's a well-functioning big company. And I think that the jungle in the beginning is just a super hard phase. I don't know what else there is. It's just you have many, many things coming at you all at once, and you have to figure out how to prioritize them, but there's not actually prioritizing because they're all emergencies. It's you have to fire someone because you didn't know how to hire anyone in the first place. And you also have to figure out how to not make it sound like that so you can get some money, so you can keep the whole thing going. And you're trying to sell to a customer, but you're I've never done this before. I don't know where we are in the process. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you'll give me some money. It's just this very confusing, unclear sort of time. So that, and I think that's basically the beginning. And I think that you just have to kind of keep pushing through. But I also feel like it's important to say there's a lot of privilege that comes in. Sometimes I don't like this word privilege, but it's just kind of sometimes you also can't push through. You have to have this stroke of luck where you can kind of just push through for a few years and not get sick and not have financial problems and not have, mental issues, whatever it is. You have to be able to just push until things get to where you need them to be, until you have a dirt road. So anyways, I think in the beginning we went through a few different people in this jungle phase, and now we've had the same people for a few years, and that's been really nice because then people build a body of knowledge about what you're doing to the point where you can really trust them, and they own that. Somebody on my team is sometimes they'll be oh, you act like you just don't know about this, and I think we should do something else, and I'm you're right, and I'm glad because it's nice to be able to share that, that work with others. So, yeah, we definitely had some coming and going in the beginning. I think things are a little bit more settled now, but it's just a hard phase.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the collaboration aspect? I know you both have small companies, so you have, a few key people. But how do you find, what are sort of some of the elements you've found that do work finally, that have stabilized maybe the people you're working with and the kind of teams you look for?
Yeah. I'm also so curious to hear about other leadership styles. I feel I only know my own, and maybe there are things that would work better that I just don't do. But I feel the number one priority is making information very clear and what needs to be done very clear. And if people do that, then nothing else matters. It's kind of you know the deadline for this, and if you get it done, I don't care if you go to Aruba the next day. It doesn't matter if you work overnight. If the customer's happy with the outcome, I'm happy with the outcome. And so it's just kind of making it very cut and dry what is important, and all of the things that don't contribute to our business working effectively are not important. That's generally what's your view?
Actually, I thought about the collaboration thing in an entirely different way of like, like with us having the subsidiary in Bangladesh, there's so many barriers to work in there that you have to have partnerships. And also be able to maintain partnerships over, obviously the very long distance from the U.S. to Bangladesh. That, back before COVID, we had a lot of trips there to meet with our team, but we've had to learn how to work with them without as much travel, and have them, get done the work that they're doing, and report back to us when there's things that they need to, need our help with. And so, and it's a funny relationship because we both need each other. We need them to buy our thing and they need us to make the thing. So it's, it can't really be separated even if it is separate businesses. So, but yeah, we've also done collaboration in a different way to kind of extend our team. We have a couple of different projects with university professors that they have specialized equipment and they can, use a postdoc or a PhD student in their lab to look at different research questions that we have. And that's going to be a lot more beneficial than us spending a whole bunch of money on buying something that we wouldn't necessarily use after the project. And then, having that highly technical person that knows how to use that instrument. So that we've learned, one of the questions, it's, in the intro she mentioned that we have nanoparticles, and nano is a very useful thing, but also misunderstood, that people think can be harmful or potentially harmful. So we've done a lot of work in trying to figure out, is there actually release of nanoparticles from our material and to what degree? And that requires a high level expertise to do that. So it's something that it just is better suited to have the work done at a university lab.
Can you guys talk a little bit about so that everyone here knows where you currently work, and talk about the place that you're in now? What are some of the advantages of that place in terms of resources, people, labor, that kind of thing? And also then, what are some of the challenges? Because I know for you, I will let you tell them where you work, but we've talked about that you made a big change. So can you just talk maybe a little bit first, Maddie, about where you work?
It was with the logistics to get here. We had lots of work to do because I live in Istanbul, so it's far away. And we started working remote because of COVID, so it was kind of more possible. And there's lots of resource. It's a different economic environment, and so it is kind of interesting seeing what's possible in a different economic environment. The kinds of people who you can work with, or the kinds of services that you can find, or the kind of materials that you can find. But we're small, so we can't always take advantage of them. But it's you can set up a factory in Istanbul in a way that you couldn't set one up in New York, which is where our studio is and where we do a lot of the main work. And we don't have the volume to fill our own factory, but if we did, then that's where I would probably choose to put it. So it has some advantages and drawbacks. I also think that there's this kind of there's this part of it where just not all decisions are based on what's best for your business and what's going to be the most economic decision. I think sometimes you also make decisions that are what will allow me to keep working on this? It's I want to keep working on this. And whatever is going to make my life happy and stable and good so I can work on this is also part of making decisions about where you are. So yeah. What do you think?
So we lived in a bunch of different cities as a startup company. We formed it in Pittsburgh, where I had done a postdoc at Carnegie Mellon, and it was kind of happened during that postdoc. And found that like Pittsburgh was really good for certain technical areas, like a lot of robotics and computer tech stuff, but like they didn't know as much about paper-based materials and water and stuff like that. So it was kind of felt like we were in the wrong, like a fish out of water sort of feeling. And so we were looking around for other places. We went to the Bay Area for a bit, we went to New York City for a bit, and then decided Boston, and have been in Boston for like about 3 years. And the reason why we picked Boston is because, well, partly because of a place called Greentown Labs, which is like a startup. Well, they have a bunch of little startup kind of workspaces there, and they also have and it's all with the name green. It's all related to like climate tech, green tech, the sort of stuff that kind of fall under like renewable materials. People aren't quite sure what to do with, to be honest, in the startup world, but but they see some like you see a lot of like battery companies and solar companies and stuff like that there. So it seemed like there was, not just computer tech, which a lot of startup stuff is computer oriented, which is, as someone who doesn't do that, it's kind of like two totally different worlds. And so it was kind of nice to see that there were other entrepreneurs working with kind of new materials and innovations in that space. And then you also find employees that have worked at startups or interested in startups as an actual career path, not like in startups in the way that we have startups, not in the way that like computer software people have startups. So it was basically an interesting opportunity to try that out, and we definitely have come across some good people there. So we're there for a little while longer at least.
And Maddie, have you thought about, maybe you could say a little more about why you went to Istanbul, but also like what has surprised you about working there that you didn't expect?
Sure. Yeah. I think my husband got a job there, and so that was mostly the reason. And yeah, I guess in terms of what's surprising, well, I think one thing that I really like is that because the time zone is different, work starts a lot later in the day, and so I feel like I get like some of my life back, right? Like nobody's emailing me from certain hours. They email me at other hours.
That's the worst thing about being in California, really.
You wake up with a heart attack because everything's already started. Yeah, that is the worst thing about. I think what else? Yeah, I feel like I'm still kind of new, so I'm learning what else is going to be surprising. I think that there is a different style of doing business, for sure, than like the US, or we work a lot with Germany, which has a certain style of doing business. It's very like, this is the contract, these are my terms, and like, this is the deliverable date, and I don't think it's quite the same in
What is it like in Istanbul? Tell us.
I think it's definitely more like, things are just kind of more fluid. It's like, here's the invoice, kind of pay it when you get a chance. Which is like, I signed up for a co-working space, and my assumption, I was like, you have my credit card, you will just take your money every month. Like, that's how it works. Like, in the US, nobody's going to not take your money if they have the opportunity to take the money. Like, I'd probably have to, like, our rent for our office space, if you don't want automatic enrollment, you have to, like, mail a check and, like, jump through it's, like, all this stuff, right? Like, they're basically like, we want you to automatically send us money. So anyways, this co-working space, I didn't know that. I assumed they were just taking it. I didn't really pay attention, and I was, like, 3 months behind, and they were eventually like, you have it. I was like, nobody was like, nobody like pushed me on this topic until it was so late. And it just, I feel like in the US, it's so commerce driven that if you're like 3 days late paying something, they're like, pay now or
you're out.
Yeah, or you're out. Like, we will come after, like, anything we have to do. I think that there definitely is a different like way about things. You don't want to make things feel too purely transactional.
Yeah.
And
There's parts of the U.S. where you still run into a little bit more flexibility, though, but it's usually with the smaller companies or like, like we moved into a new building with our company, and it's just a single guy that owns the building. There's not like a big corporation that like has all this like. We were looking at staying where we were, which was owned by a big corporation, and they were like, well, you gotta, if you want to make all these improvements, it's going to be, $100,000. And we're like, can you give us like a line item thing of what all those things cost? And they're like, this is what we give you. And you're like, now that we have basically our own space with a single landlord, he's like, if you want to do something, you can do it. You just hire someone and you can do it. So there are different flavors of like how things happen out there. It's just things probably are getting more and more like run by the big groups of stuff here. So there's a lot more of these kind of specific rules that they have that you're like, why can't I hire my own plumber if I wanted to?
Definitely.
Well, I have a couple more questions, but I want to now start having all of you think about questions you want to ask. So give me about 5 minutes here, and then I will call you up. So be prepared. Just giving you a heads up. So, but I did want to talk to you two about an aspect of business that we were talking about in the green room, which I think is important to talk about, which is the patenting aspect of this work. And what is it about getting a patent on your work that has helped you with the business side of things? And what other aspects of the patent process have you learned over time that you found really helpful?
I think that we had a very similar sentiment where it's like, as a small business, having your patents gives you value, and it makes it very clear that what you're doing is not something that somebody else can take unless they
just steal it.
Yeah, unless they just steal it. Yeah, and then that has their own risk. I think when people, like when companies hear that your thing is a patented thing versus an unpatented thing, it changes it from being like, oh, this is like a fun idea to like, oh, this is serious and real.
Yeah, they're really in the business world. Yeah, they've gotten a patent for it, or at least,
Do you each have single or multiple patents?
At this point, it's multiple, and then several pending, but like they take a while to get. So generally several years, like the process takes. But we actually had an investor, like this was before it was patented, but they took like the first version and like they read it and they sent it to their friend who knows these things and read it, and then they're like, this is good stuff, and then he invested. So like sometimes it actually is that straightforward. You're like, oh, okay, cool. But like other times, like there's companies that really want to make sure something's protected, and if you're working with them, like we've had like corporates pay for us to patent stuff because they want to make sure that like it's locked up in a way. Mm-hmm. So it's different reasons that don't seem nearly as like exciting as like, oh, I came up with this cool idea and I got a patent on it. Like it's like you did this for a certain business reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. We've never had that where a company like pays to get something patented, but it's like a really good sign if they do.
Yeah,
is they obviously care about it. We also have several patents and some pending. Yeah, and it just takes time. And that's kind of the like big narrative that like this is how I've constructed a logical story for myself, is that I feel like you just have to slowly gather all of your pieces. Yeah. Like you're like, gathering all of the little like nuts to build your meal, like whatever. And this is just one of them. You have to like get your patents. They take forever. You file, you argue at the patent office. You file continuations, and it's just a very long process. You just got to stick with it until you get them, and then they're useful for your business.
All right, so my last question, and now I hope somebody will start coming up to a mic or getting a mic handed to them, is what are you working on now? What's the new thing or the thing that you can talk about if it's not patent pending?
Well, Yeah, if it's not patented, I don't think we would be mentioning it. No, or at least patent pending. It's actually not that new, but it's in product development, which means we don't have like a finished product. But we've been working a lot on microwave food packaging, like actually using the same technology as our water filter. So this is something that I'm sure you guys have seen before, but you don't think about it much. But there's something that comes with like a lot of frozen food that is this like cardboard thing coated with this grayish metal stuff, and that's called a microwave susceptor, and it helps food get crispy in the microwave. That technology has been basically not changed for like probably the last 20 to 30 years. And we were approached actually by a big food company, and they were like, your paper has metal in it and it can transfer water through it. Like, yes. And they're like, have you ever microwaved it? And I was like, well, actually I have. During my PhD, I did some microwave synthesis because microwaves are a great way to heat stuff. And chemists do microwave synthesis as like one of the various ways you synthesize, different chemicals. So I used that during my PhD, and it worked great. And I did notice that the material got kind of hot, but that was just kind of an observation and didn't really mean that much at the time. So fast forward several years later, and we've gotten a few different development checks from this company, and they're like really interested in scaling this to be the new microwave susceptor for a lot of their like frozen food products. And I'm not going to say that much more than that, but it basically, one of the advantages it has over the current one is that it doesn't have any plastic in it, which means that you can have liquid go through it, which means the food isn't soggy. The plastic susceptors have sometimes some areas that kind of end up a little soggy, a little crispy, and just not generally desirable. And so most of the time people don't even use them because they do it once and they're like, and then they stick it in their toaster oven or something, air fryer, whatever. But, that takes longer than a minute or two in the microwave. So everybody knows time is important. So, and I'm a fairly new mother. I have a 3-year-old, and let me tell you, if I could have dinner done faster for him, I would love that. Pasta takes way too long to cook, and everyone knows pasta takes like 20 minutes. But that's not something I would use a susceptor for. But at any rate, like saving time in certain instances in the kitchen is definitely very important. And so it's totally different than water filters, but yet kind of very similar technology, and like it also is interesting to look at what we've done from a different angle, and you kind of learn new things about what you already did. So it's enjoyable for that reason, and also we get to have fun snacks.
Yeah, the testing must be entertaining.
Yeah. Sometimes you burn the food though, and that's kind of.
Yeah.
What about you, Maddie? What are you working on?
Yeah, we're working a lot on heaters these days. So flexible heaters. There's lots of interesting stuff in making heating elements. It's like they have to pass a lot of different robustness tests. They have to be even. Therefore, you have to get evenly conductive material, which actually isn't that easy to get. And that's basically what we're doing. They have to be really cheap for most applications.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of heaters.
Can you mention like a kind of application that's particularly of interest to the market?
Yeah, it's really hard to make these things sound that appealing. We work on a lot of like automotive heating, like surface heating. You already have seat heaters in your car, but for like a series of reasons, they could be better. So, things like that, especially with the change to electric vehicles. Like normally your car gets heated by air running over the internal combustion engine. It's combustion, gets really hot. You run air over it, the air gets hot, and the cabin's hot, and you're warm. And electric vehicles don't have this because the engine doesn't get hot. So suddenly heating all of the air in the car it's not an efficient idea anymore. You have to find ways to heat the surfaces in order to give people comfort, so they'll use their electric vehicles in the winter and not just abandon them because they're cold. And so that's kind of where a lot of the surface heating in the car space, and efficient surface heating is becoming interesting, and that's kind of what the market's looking for.
Great. All right, first question from the audience. Who's ready? Who's going to be bold? There we go. All right, let's go with this gentleman in front first.
As it turns out, you have almost the exact skill set of a human being I would have needed to talk to about 2 years ago for several projects I was working on. I had 2 questions for current projects. The first is, have you done anything with microfluidics in fabrics?
We really haven't. Yeah, we have kind of like a very specific little tiny box of things that we do, but it would be interesting. What are you doing with microfluidics in fabrics?
Well, one of the windmills I've been chasing for years is cooling clothing. The world isn't getting colder. It's getting a hell of a lot hotter.
That is true.
There's a wide variety of industries like construction workers, firefighters, or hobbyists such as motorcyclists for whom cooling garments would be an incredibly useful market to be in. And it's something I've tinkered with larger scale fluidics. With small scale fluidics would be an interesting value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also how NASA spacesuits were cooled. Yeah, you probably saw this already. It'd be interesting. It's kind of not exactly an electronic textile problem, though, because you don't really need like distributed soft flexible electronics within the garment. You know, like distributed piping within the garment. But it is very cool. Like I would love to see that.
So, sorry, did we have a?
Yeah, you direct traffic.
Yeah, go, gentleman in blue, and then yeah, and then next to him after that.
Very fascinating. I appreciate the talk around intellectual property, being a employee of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Congratulations on your several patents. Being a patent examiner, I'm going to actually twist it so my director, who is a former trademark examining attorney, will be happy. In terms of trademarks, you've talked a little bit about how patents have helped you, and I appreciate that companies understand the value that a patent can take with protecting, assets in kind of your market, right? So trademarks, how have you used trademarks and other forms of intellectual property collectively together to help you gain market share, at least protect your yard from invasion from competitors?
I kind of feel like I would love if someday people are stepping into our yard and wants to violate our brand. Nobody wants to violate our brand at this moment, but I keep the trademarks because I'm like, someday maybe this will be very useful. I think
I think it's also depends on the kind of what side of the business you're on. Like the B2C companies, I think trademarks are much more important than B2B. And, you work with a whole bunch of different companies with your materials, but do they care if it's trademarked for sales? Not really. They care that it does what you say it does, right? I'm thinking with the water filter, that we don't sell it in the U.S., but if we did, we would probably want to, go ahead with the trademark and all that, because it is something that is sold in a retail shop to regular folks.
Well, that's a great point. As trailblazers, trendsetters, right? You're at the beginning of it, so I think your trademarks are going to grow in value as you gain more market share and people understand the value of what you're doing and producing and try to copycat. So congratulations. Great.
Eric, next, the gentleman there next to him. Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation. My question is to Maddie. Growing up, LA Gears with the light up shoes, I want to know what is holding back wearable for the public. Wearable has been out for a lot of years and all that stuff, but it's not mainstream. I want to see this jacket warm me up in the winter, right? A light jacket, but I know that there's cost involved. So what type of technology is setting that back?
Yeah, I would also love to see that happen. And I think a lot of it is that consumers of clothing, which I guess all of us, have very high expectations for their clothes. Because you're used to being able to take your clothes and like throw it in the washing machine or like crumple it up and never think about it and just have it work consistently. And I think that, and also have it be very cheap. People also don't want to pay too much for these products. And so I think that there's just a really big mismatch right now between the level of finesse for these materials and what customers expect from their clothing. They don't expect to have to treat them like a technical device. I don't know if there's really one core technology. Like people talk about, oh, batteries are holding us back. And obviously if you somehow magically didn't need a battery or had a really dense chemistry and it was very small, that would be useful. But I think it's really more about like the design and the finesse of integrating what exists. And it just, things just haven't quite gotten there. I think a lot of it is that it's very hard also for companies in this space to get the funding to take products all the way to market that way. And somewhere along the way, they fall off. So it's like, oh, the cost was too high. Consumer demand was too slow. A million different, you have to like perfectly walk the tightrope to get it there. And I just, don't think it's been pushed that far. Yeah, maybe like the biggest thing would be, maybe money is almost more important than the technology. Like if somebody had enough money and time, I think there could be the heated jacket that you want.
Eric there, yes, standing, yeah.
Hi, my name is Althea Hayden. I've worked in the operating room for 49 years. It's always cold, so in that same vein, I would love to have a warming jacket to wear under my sterile gown, surgical gown. I think you could do that.
Wow.
Yeah. But,
I think you have a couple customers already.
There are already some heated jackets on the market. Why haven't you bought one of them? Not that I want you to buy someone else's stuff, but I'm curious.
They are? Okay, because I work with Kaiser Permanente in the operating room. And seriously, the operating rooms are very, very cold. As of today, I was standing on my feet for like 9 hours.
Wow.
And freezing. So...
Wow. Can you bring whatever you want to the operating room? Like, could you bring your own heated jacket in, or would it have to be like operating room certified?
They would have to have something to do with it. I couldn't just bring anything in. No.
Yeah.
Because we have cooling jackets where we put ice bags in. But we don't have warming jackets. And the patients, of course, have warming blankets that we hook up to a machine and everything. But the staff, we don't have anything to warm us up.
Yeah.
It's really, really cold.
I think that's
And it has to, of course, it has to be in the operating room to keep the bacterial level down.
Right.
I like it. It sounds kind of like a small thing, but when you're very cold, you can't perform well. It like does have a big impact on work.
Is that something you might be interested
I mean,
in?
I would love to. You don't know how much I would love to.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have a question in the back. I saw a hand raised back there, yeah. Yeah, Eric, if you can head sort of, yeah, she's standing now for you. Thank you. This is funny, I feel like I'm directing traffic. Like I even know.
That person. That person.
And it's really bright up here, so it's very hard to see you all. So just in case you're wondering why I'm like peering at you oddly.
I was just wondering, during the course of development and working with partners, have you had to sign over like interest of your patents or assign a certain percentage of your patents to get them interested, since patents can be used as collateral? And I'm a patent examiner, so that's how I can throw that in there. They're form of collateral.
I can answer, no, we haven't. No.
Not as a form of collateral, but sometimes you do get these agreements where companies write in terms about using your background IP, which is basically your patents.
Yeah.
And you have to negotiate your way out of that. In most cases, I think, I don't know, maybe, have you seen that at all? Or maybe work with nicer people than that.
I think we just work with people that wouldn't know what to do because they're more on a different, they're on like a final end phase where they're like, you do whatever you do and make sure it works and we'll buy the thing. You know, that's what their interest is. Like, it's not like they're messing around with our part of it that much.
All right, one more question. Okay, well, Art, you know, yeah, come on, Art, it's all right. This is your night too. Why don't you ask the final question here? And then you'll have an opportunity to hopefully come up and chit-chat a little bit afterwards too, folks.
Great talks. I think we're very fortunate to have the two of you coming from very different places right now. And I know, Theresa, you were talking about having to, I'm wondering about the atmosphere for innovation. There's all this buzz about innovation in America, but I noticed, Theresa, you were going around the country trying to find a place that worked for you. And I'm wondering also, might want to compare the sort of innovation buzz in Istanbul with your experience here, just, you know, picking up the theme of innovative places.
I think that it's hard to answer that. Like, we were at different places with our company, at the different, like, places in terms of, like, where we were in the company at those different times. And it might be different now, since we've gone so much further. But it kind of ends up being what you kind of feel is the right place for, like, you as, like, the owner, right? Like, where does this make sense for me, and what does it, like, you know, what sort of advantages do you see? Like, I'm not saying that there isn't innovation in any of the other cities I lived in. There's plenty of innovation in all the places that I mentioned. It's just how it feels in terms of what your company is focusing on. And, you know, perhaps, you know, it's interesting with being in the paper world. You know, I might say, like, yeah, you know, maybe going to Finland is actually better for a paper-based startup because they have a whole bunch of interest in paper startups over there, and it's a lot more of a, I'm going to say, regular business there, even though there's lots of paper folks in the US. They don't seem to innovate as much for some reason. So, but that's not to say we're going to move to Finland, but I'm just, like, giving it as an example. That, you know, sometimes nice to be around where, like, your industry is to help, like, you know, I mean, obviously you can always travel and meet people at conferences and wherever, but it's nice to have it close. And so.
What about you, Maddie?
Yeah, you know, I feel like there's a time where you just kind of need resources, that you need things to happen to you in order to move it forward. Like, you need to just go to the happy hour. Maybe, like, you'll meet someone. Like, you got to meet someone. And I think that at that phase, it's really great to be in places like Silicon Valley or, like, Boston.
Yeah.
But I also feel like at some point you're kind of, like, going in a direction and you just want to go and you don't want anyone to, like, try and get you to go somewhere else. And I feel like that's something I really liked about being in Istanbul, is that there's, you know, there's this, like, it was another book I read that was saying, I think it was like a book about advertising. They were saying this idea of, like, work is worship, and, you know, it's not meant to say anything that's, you know, here or there about religion, but it's just kind of like, at some point you want to be able to get up each day and be like, this is my work. This is what I'm doing. I'm writing these messages. I have this thing to do. I need to focus. I need to kind of, like, chart my path and, like, have my connection. And I think that when that's the phase that things are in, it's kind of nice not to be in one of these hubs because you're not looking for something to happen to you. You're like, I will make the thing happen. Like, you know, I need the focus to make this thing happen.
I will say that as the company's gone on longer, I do go to much less of the startup stuff because it's not like, I'm like, I kind of just need to get stuff done, and the people I need to hire aren't necessarily here. Maybe some of them, but, you know, like look or network with. I'm not the big networking person at the company, but, like, I'm just like, I need to have space to work on the stuff I'm working on, you know, like, and that can happen in many ways, but.
Yeah, it can happen
Yeah.
in many ways. I think that that's true. I mean, it is nice being in a place, like you're mentioning that your CEO is traveling all over the U.S. If you're in a place where you don't have to do that to get things done, I think that that could be a big advantage.
Yeah.
I don't know where that place is, though.
Well, so I have to ask before we wrap up, and we should wrap up, but then was COVID actually helpful in some ways? Did you find that because you didn't have to travel all the time and all that, that you could just focus on your thing? Or did that just have different challenges?
Definitely different challenges. You know, it's mixed. Like, we were able to do, like, for one of the things we were trying to do was scale up our manufacturing at that time. And at first, nobody wanted us on site because, you know, but the manufacturing people were still going to their sites, just to be clear. They weren't working from home. You can't operate your big machinery from home. But they didn't want outsiders. And it's really difficult when you have a new process to communicate what is right and wrong about that when you're not there. So, like, that was very challenging. But it changed over time, like, because, you know, they still have to go to work. They can't stop going to their job, otherwise they go out of business. So that kind of like went back to the office much sooner than, like, I know some companies that are still like working from home or you know, whatever. So like it was really just kind of that 2020, early 2021 that we had a lot of challenges, but then after that it was like, of course we have to be there. And like nobody questioned it when there was visitors on their manufacturing sites.
What about you, Maddie?
Yeah, that's difficult. It's hard to collaborate. And during that time, I was also in school full time, and it only worked because of COVID, because nobody asked me to go anywhere. I think otherwise it wasn't really possible.
What were you going to school in?
Material science and engineering.
So you sort of backed into it after starting this company?
I did because I really want to work on e-textiles. Like my whole life is like crafted around e-textiles.
That's great.
For better or for worse.
Well, there's so many more questions I'd love to ask, but we also have to wrap up. So I just want to first of all thank all of you for coming. And really, please, everyone join me in a round of applause for our speakers today. Thank you all, and thanks to all my colleagues who helped put this together, and we are so appreciative to see all of you here in person. And we look forward to more programs, but not right away. But we will keep you posted, and please, I hope you've joined our mailing list if you haven't already. But you can also find us online at invention.si.edu if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing. So with that, thank you very much.